Welcome to Dynamic Thriving Podcast. I am your host, Mary Ann Pack, spiritual guide into all things life transformational. And today we have a guest with us, Jen Jones. So I am so happy that you are here, and we're going to talk about networking and connecting and all those wonderful things that us introverts tend to have a little problem with. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this topic, as I usually am, and I'm excited to dig in.
Good, good. Jen and I met in Ladies Power Lunch. It is a very active group of women, entrepreneurs, business women, people in service for the good of the world. And if you ladies are looking for a support group, a community that you can belong to and feel a part of, Ladies Power Lunch on Facebook is the place to be. It is free to join. We have one rule that our leader tells us, Dr. Divya Shepherd. Our intention is to support one another, to intentionally bring support to each other, to build each other up, to collaborate, to so that we can increase our impact and income. So if you're interested, you can look on Facebook for Ladies Power Lunch, and you will find that group. Also, you can visit their website, ladiespowerlunch.com. So again, I want to welcome you, Jen. Let's just jump right in. Who are you and what good do you bring into the world?
Oh, wow. So I am a mom of three, which is super exciting these days, especially with two teenagers. So I have an 18-year-old graduating this year, a 16-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so there's a big gap there, and it's been a ride for sure. Sometimes I joke around and say that I'm done parenting. Oh, but I still have a third one that I need to still parent, but he's going to get off easy. I live in a small little town called Holland, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Sturbridge and about an hour and 10 minutes from Boston. And we live in this small, beautiful community where, we spend a lot of time enjoying the lakes in the area. We do like to take walks, but we are definitely vacation people, which we are looking to vacation several times this year that we're super excited about. And I am the founder and master connector of Connect and Elevate, and I help introvert entrepreneurs. I support them in getting them to get out of their comfort zone just a little bit and also bring more joy into their life and their business. So I'm not here to tell you to go and network with 100 people. That is definitely not my style. And we are going to get deep into some of this stuff that we have. But Connect and Elevate is also a free community on Facebook that I started about 2 years ago when I kept hearing people say, oh, I see you everywhere. You're always networking. Oh, I hate to network. I don't know how to network. And it just birthed out of hearing people see me around and say, like, how do you do it? And so I started teaching people how to network and connect. Then COVID happened and we had to shift gears and figure out how to network on Zoom. Funny story real quick is I had someone say to me, hey, are you going to start coaching people to network online? And I was like, oh gosh, no. And not 4 months later we're in quarantine. Next thing you know, we're, on Zoom networking. So never say never. So that is Connect and Elevate. And I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. Little secret that I don't tell a lot of people, but I shared last week with a group of women is that I started selling Avon. That was my entrepreneur deal when I started back in my early 20s. And after that, I was just hooked on being my own boss. So I went into real estate, and I'm a broker owner of my own real estate company too. So it's exciting.
That's very exciting. I love that. So you have a lot, well, with those kinds of businesses, you definitely have to network and connect. Yeah. So I can see how this is just a natural progression for you to be able to share that because, in learning how to be proficient at that.
Mhm.
I always say our mess is our message. So whatever we've dealt with and gone through, that's usually what we're going to end up teaching or, being in business with, or some part of our life is going to
Yeah.
revolve around what we've gone through, the transformation that we've had in our lives. So you call yourself a master connector. Can you give us an idea of what that means?
Yes. So again, it's not that I go out and meet hundreds and hundreds of people. What it means is that I'm really intentional when I actually go out and network and connect with people. So I'm always on the lookout for like-minded women who are, looking to actually have a relationship, not just sell me something on Facebook Messenger. So I'm really looking for those deep, authentic relationships. And when I do find them, there's my connection, but I'm always, always on the lookout. Who can I connect that person with? And so when I think of a master connector and how I use the term is that I'm here to connect you with whoever you're looking for, or maybe we're having a conversation and I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to meet so and so because Mary's awesome and you guys are going to click, and you know what, you're probably going to collaborate too, and just really show people that there's other networks that I'm in that I can share. And so that's where master connector came from.
I love that. I love that. So our topic today is go deep, not wide. Can you just explain a little bit about what you mean with that?
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were talking about is like our mess sort of comes into what we end up teaching. So, go deep, not wide actually came to me a few months ago. And I was like, Jen, like, you've been in real estate 17 years. Like, how are you thinking that you're building your online business by like getting more emails? Like, you have to offer a free something so that you can get more emails. And I'm not saying like you shouldn't be getting emails. I'm just saying like your focus should be on the people that you've already had connections with. And I was guilty of that. I had a connection, several connections at the beginning of fall, and I never did anything else. I never followed up. I never said, hey, let's connect again. Okay, the master connector, not connecting, and building those deeper relationships. I'm like, why? It was sort of like, that emoji.
Yes.
So, go deep, not wide is really about cultivating the relationships that you have right now. And it's not about how many people can you add to your network, how many people can you add to your email database, because ultimately those emails have faces, they have people behind it, and you want to grow your business. You really have to get down and dirty and actually network with people, even if that's one on one, because it's hard as introvert to go on a Zoom call, or even now like in our area in Massachusetts we're actually allowed to meet in person. So there are some opportunities where it can be really difficult. So go deep, not wide is really just focusing on who do you know right now that you can build deeper relationships. And it doesn't mean don't add people, because we're always meeting new people, whether it's in a Facebook group or maybe we talk to someone, they said, oh, you should really meet up with this person. So I think that the focus should be on the people that we already know before we start building more people into that funnel, where it's like, okay, well, geez, my favorite people I haven't talked to. Why haven't I talked to them? Why haven't I invited them to a fun Zoom? So there were a lot of things that came out in January that I was like, oh. So go deep, not wide is really about cultivating the existing relationships that we have, because we forget that, we want to have those deeper relationships, but we're being told or we're being, called to like do something else and meet those new people. And those are seasons of life too, where, what, we're going to meet, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet 10 new people this week because I have 3 networking, events, whatever it is. That's overwhelming to me, but I'm just saying, like, if that's your goal, that's great. But remember that that can also burn you out.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I'm not a big networking person because of my introversion.
Hmm.
I love talking with people.
Yeah.
It's like me getting the first step out there to actually go approach somebody. And so what kind of advice do you give for somebody like me? And I loved how you put that you're intentional about what your networking is going to be, because there are so many times I finally accept somebody's connection on LinkedIn or somewhere, Facebook, whatever, and then they immediately barrage me with their sales pitch. I get so tired of that.
Mhm.
And it feels overwhelming. It feels like I'm almost being attacked,
Yeah.
like all I wanted to do was hit connect, you know, and then maybe find out a little about this person.
Mhm.
They don't ask you questions about who you are. They just jump right into, hey, can I send you this?
Yeah, and that's what they're being taught. So, I do try to have some compassion for them, but some days it's just really hard, especially with knowing that like relationships matter. And if people just paid a little bit more attention, and asking a couple of questions, maybe you would be interested in what they have to sell you. But they haven't given you the opportunity to even share anything about you. So that does make it difficult. And to answer your question about being an introvert and talking about networking,
Mhm.
what I have broken down is I have talked about your introvert unique gifts, which I'm going to be starting to talk. I have my little Wonder Woman necklace on. They are now going to be called introvert superpower. So be on the lookout for that language coming out. It's more than just unique gifts. Like you have superpowers. And I really think that you embody the superpowers, such as you're a good listener. You can ponder some ideas. Maybe you get back to the person the next day. So our superpowers are something that we need to hone in on and use and start using them and stop thinking that they're holding us back. So if you go into a networking event and you're like, I'm only going to meet one person, that's my thing. I'm just going to meet one person. I don't need to meet everybody. So keeping your goals very simple and easy to do. Maybe you get there early. On Zoom, it's a little bit different because depending on the events, you can get there early and do some networking. In person, it was a lot easier to get there early to sort of get a feel for the space. But I also remind people about your energy. Like for me, I do it a lot. Like 6 and 6:30 p.m. meetings are not for me. And sometimes I will go back to back and do like something later in the afternoon. And then I'm going to go to a network and I'm like, oh my gosh. So always be aware of your energy. So if you know that, late night meetings or late evening meetings are not for you, you're like, okay, but I still want to go. Maybe you go every other month. So just really looking at what works for you and keeping your energy in check. I've been doing a lot better with this is keeping white space in between connections. So, if I'm connecting with you today at, 11 o'clock, then I'm not going to talk to anyone until like 1 o'clock. Cause I need that space in there to rejuvenate. And I know that I can only do two or three tops connections a day because then I'm like exhausted and want to go curl up and read a book
Mhm.
or journal. So really just taking the time to think about what works for you. I used to tell people about, finding a safe place when you were not working in person, like know where the bathroom is, know where you could just go and sit quietly for a couple of minutes if you needed to like escape, especially when they get loud. If there's a lot of people in the room, it could be really overwhelming. Just get a little time out. And so you can do that on Zoom. I don't know how many times I've just shut off my camera just for a few minutes, just so I could breathe and say, like, okay, I don't have to be showing up for this 2 hours straight. And then come back on camera when maybe you're in breakout rooms or you have to speak. So there are opportunities to do that online. It's just a little bit more difficult because then people are like, oh, why does she have camera? You know what? If that works for you and that's, your intention, and it's not like, oh, I'm going to get on a phone call and stuff like that. Then, if that feels right to you, then, shut off your camera for a little while. It's okay. 2 hours is a long time to be on Zoom for sure.
Yes.
So I hope that helps with a little bit of tips. Your energy, really just, making sure that you're, not saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet 10 people and making it overwhelming for you. There
Mhm.
might be one person on that Zoom call that stands out. You do a little private message to them. And then, sometimes they don't see it. So sometimes I've done it in like the big group, like, hey, Mary, I'd love to connect, just so that they can see it. And sometimes people send along their list. So you could just, reach out to them and say, hey, I loved what you were talking about. I think we should connect. Do you have any time? So that's always a great opportunity to really get in front of people and cultivate new relationships.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely not a later night person. I'm best in the morning. I have to know my energy. Like you said, I know I'm best in the morning, early afternoon. It can't get too late for me. Um, and also, I liked how you said, have that safe space, find a safe space if you are in person or even on camera where you can like take that little break, because I'm very much I'm very sensitive to energy of the room,
Mhm.
of the sound.
Yep.
It's almost like it's too stimulating and I have to quiet it down. I have to quiet me down, quiet that energy down so I don't carry that with me, because then my mind's so scattered, I can't even focus on finding the person that I want to connect with.
Right. No, and that's true. And that's for, and that I hear that a lot too. It's definitely easier on Zoom, but in person, it can be very overwhelming. So I always find that as you're walking in, kind of scope out where you can kind of escape for a few minutes.
Mhm.
And when I was doing in person, like overnight things like conferences, I used
Mhm.
to always just get my own room too, just so that during the day, if things get overwhelming, I go and I'll sit in my room just to like quiet down, just like just overstimulating sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's always a good one. So hopefully this year we'll be, back doing conferences and hanging out in hotels by ourselves.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it'll be nice to have those conferences or retreats or whatever again in person, because we just miss that human connection that we need.
Yeah. And I'm
Um,
not a hugger, but I'm ready to start hugging some people.
yeah, well, I'm a big hugger, and that's a real problem for me. So I was also we were talking one time about about giving value
Yes.
to your network. Like, how do you give value to your network or your community or where whoever you might be connecting with or serving?
So I have props, although I know some people are not going to be able to see these, but I'm going to show them anyway. They're in these little netted bags, and I call it love mail, so that people actually have something that you can, mail to them. So it's a hope stone. And I started sending these out at the beginning of 2021 because I feel like a lot of people needed that hope and just some, inspirational things. This one says, if not you, who? And it's a little magnet that they can put somewhere, whether on their desk or refrigerator or somewhere that they want to keep it. And I call it love mail because I really thought about my audience and was like, my audience are women. Most of them are mothers. And so I felt like at the time, maybe not so much right now, but at the time, hope was something that we all really needed to, really get through. And so I started mailing these out to people, asking people. So I have email addresses and I have names, right? But I was like, how do you ask people for their mailing address without seem like you're
Yes.
creepy? Okay. That's how I, as an introvert, I'm like, people are not going to give me their email, their mailing address. No way. And so I started asking, I'm like, I have some love mail that I want to send out to you. I'd love to have your address. And not one person, like they just sent it over to me. They're like, yep, here you go. So
Mhm.
I've sent out almost 50 of these. And for me, I'm adding value to my community because I thought about them and I want them to know that I was thinking about them. I don't have it, but I have little cards that I had made up, like personal notes that I can handwrite. And I love personal notes are like my favorite thing in the world. People love, well, one, getting mail in general. But when you take the time to actually put the energy into that message that you're sending them, maybe you saw something on Facebook, maybe you had a connection call with them and something stood out that you really wanted to write to them. So personal notes is also another value add. Something I just started recently are the Tip Tuesdays, and I'm now seeing it everywhere, maybe because I wasn't paying attention before, but I'm seeing it more and more now where, we're able to not only in our own groups talk about a tip on Tuesday, but there are other groups that are doing it too, where if you have a valuable tip, it relates to your business, you can put a beautiful graphic together, a nice post, and get that message and that value out there instead of, we've done a lot of this Facebook stuff where it's like, okay, share Saturday, share what you got going on,
Mhm.
and no one looks at it, right? I mean, I was posting every Saturday on all the groups that I could post on, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like my intentionality was just get it out there, get it out there, get it out there. And I wasn't connecting with anyone. And I'm like, okay, step back, these Tip Tuesdays. And of course, I was just like, let me just do some tips. Oh, Tip Tuesday. I definitely didn't make that up. But it's an opportunity where you're not just asking for them to do something for you, you're offering the value. Some of the things that I talk about in my group is like, where are you networking? Because I don't know all the places that people are networking. And if we're all sharing and bringing that value to the group, then we have value. I'm trying to think of some other things. So bringing people together. So I do think that that is probably my number one thing is if you have a Facebook group or if you have a group of people that you think you could bring together, Zoom meetings are awesome. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can do games, you can do a scavenger hunt. That was my probably my favorite. I don't host the scavenger hunt and fun things yet. Fun is a little hard for me, so I do things that are a little bit more practical, like let's speed network, yay! Those types of things. So add value to your community. Know your audience. I said that earlier. Know your audience. A hope stone may not be something that your audience is be like, oh my gosh, what is she sending me? So just
Mhm.
think about who they are, what they value, and then offer it to them, regularly, weekly in Facebook posts. Maybe it's quarterly, fun night out, with Jen. So think about things that you can cultivate yourself without having to like go to other people's networking events, but how can you cultivate your community and bring people together? So my favorite thing that happened to me, and it wasn't in person, I started doing coffee connections with my real estate VIPs 2 or 3 years ago. And they came together. There were about 15 of them. And some of them were like, oh, we are Facebook friends, but never met in person. So my favorite part of bringing people together is them actually meeting. So I thought, and then bring it online. I brought some people together and someone was like, oh, Angela, I've never met you, but I see you all the time on, we do a lot of stuff with, a couple networking groups but they've never actually talked one-on-one. So that spurred a whole relationship. So I just love sharing those stories because we forget that those little things are actually big things. And, they come to me and like, oh my gosh, it's because of you. I did this and collaborated with this person. And it just makes you feel really good that they were able to do something with, it's usually free, bringing people together. So that one is probably my number one value add for people.
Yeah. I like that. It reminds me, years ago when I got my life coaching certification, it was in 2014. And through that process, I didn't meet this other coach until we were on some coaching calls afterwards, and we were on some connection calls, and we just seemed to connect. And
Mhm.
so we actually stayed on the call a little bit longer with each other and exchanged some information so we could find each other and connected. And we became really good friends virtually
Yeah.
for years. I didn't she's in Maryland and I'm in Texas,
Yep.
and it was years before she actually was able to come to Texas. And we got to meet for the first time and go out for dinner, as two couples, because she brought
Right.
her husband and my
Oh,
husband was there.
nice.
And it was just so much fun to actually meet her. And because there would be times that we got to know each other so well virtually and on the phone, and that she would say something about, well, you know that ring that I wear, such and such. And I'm like, no, I've never met you. So that just reminded me of that, how you can develop those virtual relationships and they can actually go deep before you ever get to meet them in person.
And it also brings forward, which I haven't mentioned, which is usually what I mention up front, is that a lot of our relationships that we cultivate turn into personal relationships.
Yes.
And I think that, we undervalue that. And I say some people undervalue that time when we're getting deeper and getting to know people. Like if I'm a mom and you're a mom and we're dealing with teenagers, like that's probably what we're going to talk about.
Right.
But when I, think about life coach, I'm going to refer her. So it's like, it's one of those things where we used to be taught, or I was taught, like, okay, business is here
Yeah.
and personal is here, and we don't do this. We don't mesh together.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, like, no way. Like if you want life in harmony, sometimes you're working a little bit more, sometimes your family a little bit more, and you're just, this pendulum back and forth trying to figure out life. But those relationships definitely overlap all the time. So I love that example of, one, you can meet people online, and two, they could be really good friends, and then you go out on double date. Like that's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so fun. And I like that I think I'm more that way too, being the introvert that I am. I would rather go deep with somebody or my community to serve, to give value, than just have all these really surface acquaintances.
Yep.
Because there's so many times that I accept friends or somebody and they're, in a group that I know and they connect and I see that we have several friends together, so I accept them. But yet it tends to be, again, don't you think a little bit more, it's that wide, shallow
Yes.
rather than narrow, deep.
Yes.
And focused attention and focused intention about what we're doing together. Because, meeting so many of you ladies in Ladies Power Lunch and now getting to spend time with you, getting to know you before we have our podcast recording and then recording and then following up later, it's just like, and then we see each other on group calls and meetings and things, and you just feel more a part of the group even as a whole.
Yes, building community is so important. And it does it on its own. Like you said, like, we're connecting outside of Dr. Divya, like doing anything. She just provides the sacred space for us to connect. And that's a good example of a community that gives value to their audience and also allows the community to come together. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I love being able to, yeah. And it's sort of like, sometimes when I'm on a Zoom call or something at a meeting and there's a new person on, or maybe I've seen that person a few times and you just feel kind of like drawn to them.
Right.
Like your energies are connecting, spirit to spirit. There's something there. And it's just like you're almost driven to make contact with them.
Yes.
Because there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
And those are those important deep relationships you want to develop, or at least find out why you had this why you had this pull, this draw towards them.
Exactly. Yeah, networking can be fun. And you don't have to do it all the time to build your business and, fulfill things, your soul. There are times when, taking a break from like traditional networking is actually good for you, especially as an introvert, just to like take a step back. And then, you get back into it. And that's sort of, let's ebb and flow of networking. But on those times when you're like, oh, I'm not going to go out there, don't forget to do some of those one-on-ones just to stay connected with people, even if it's what I'll call your core super connectors, right? Those people that you value the most and the best, like don't give up on those relationships. Really keep in contact with them, because maybe you're also struggling. Maybe that's why you're not going to networking events. I've noticed that with myself, is that when I kind of step back, it's like, okay, I have to ask myself, what's going on? And then I reach out to a couple people and I feel like I'm brought back into like, okay, I'm okay. This is good. This is why I have friends. And usually they're entrepreneurs, because usually it's, business related, but
Yeah.
it's just a nice way to live your life and really grow your business and feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what do you think about, some of the groups that allow you to do posts or whatever? And maybe you're an introvert like me, and you're not one of those, well, I'm just going to trudge out there and contact people. But what about even posting when they allow you to, I'm open to connecting with people and allowing people to come to you almost. Um, because yeah, for me, I'm not as much go out there and hey, I see you and I want to connect with you and boom, boom, boom. What about throwing that out there and offering, I'm open to connecting to anybody who feels so inclined. Is that a good idea?
I think it's a great idea. I see it a lot. And I also, when you brought that up, I'm like, that's really good. So we won't go into it because I'm not the human design expert, but some people, going and asking is very difficult, but the receiving part of it, where people come to them, is easier. So definitely, I would absolutely do something like that. Because if you're like, oh, I have a couple open spots, I want to get to meet some new people from this community, here, whether it's here's my link, send me a PM, let me know, whatever feels good to you. I would absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because that seems to be a little more comfortable for me,
Right. Right.
because I'm not yeah, I will. It's not that I don't. It's just it's really out of my comfort zone pretty much to make the first contact,
Yep.
to make the first move, but I'm open. I'm very open for people to contact me.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
available.
Great.
And so, I have made contacts that way. I mean, I have made connections because I offered to be open to a Zoom coffee or whatever, our chat time. So,
Really good.
I that has helped me as far as, when that's offered to be, as a group allows
Yeah,
to
no,
throw
that's
that
great.
out.
Well, I remember you putting out like, hey, I have a podcast. Let me know, if you're thinking, if this might be a good match for you. And then we connected and then we saw each other on something else. Like, it's just funny how like, our worlds sort of, happened very close together, that we're not related. And I'm like, okay, we definitely need to do something.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that's the other thing is sometimes we as introverts have to have some reason to connect with somebody. So for me, being able to share that I'm open, I'm looking for a guest on the podcast gives me a reason to connect with somebody that maybe I wouldn't ordinarily do.
That's a great idea.
So
I
I've
don't
had
have a hard time doing that, but I do know people who would rather put something out like that so that people could come to them. So I think it's brilliant. It's very brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have definitely made some beautiful connections with having the podcast and being able to, um, put it out there. And then, because we always have a chat before, so
Right.
that we can, get a date together for recording. So the chat time is just so. Sometimes we're on there an hour and a half, and it's only supposed to be like a 30-minute chat.
Right. I think that's what happened to us.
Yes, yes, yes. Because
Yep.
then I ended up coming to one of your workshops or programs or
Yep.
whatever it was. It was so enjoyable. So, getting to know each other that way, and even uh, connecting and offering for somebody to attend something
Yes.
is a good way to get to know somebody.
Yep.
Ask, even ask, when you meet each other, hey, what you got going on? Do you have
Yep.
something going on you'd like for me to attend? Can I support you in this way? because that's another way that we're intentionally supporting
Yes.
our other, our community.
Mhm. So I do a spotlight talk. I had started it a while back, then took a break, and we got it back up and running. And it's called Spotlight Talk, where I bring in community members to talk to me about what they do, but it also adds value. So, we want to make sure that, the top 3 tips that they have is something that, can be, implemented, or just enough to get people to connect with them, even though it's Facebook Live. Be like, oh, I like their energy. I like what they're talking about. Oh, I'm going to comment. So just giving people an opportunity to shine. And like you said, you may not reach out and say like, oh, I want to do this, but I may say, hey, you want to do this? So I think it's a great opportunity to add value and really spotlighting your community. I call it like a bullseye, right? Those really amazing people that you could not, I say live without, but those people that you just treasure so much. Those are the people that you want to try to give as much value to, because they are so close to you and you want them to thrive and you want them to succeed. And, and they're like your friends. So, it's always a great opportunity to get some good information out there, because maybe, your community hasn't heard about what they do. And that's been the case. There's been a couple of people who are like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know you did that. So it's just a great opportunity to open up people's eyes and offer value. So to go back to the question, offer value. But I think it's a great idea to put out there, hey, I would love to connect. Hey, I have this going on. Would love to have you join me. Hey, keeping it open without being really direct. I'm really direct. And I think it comes from probably skills that I've built over the last, couple decades, where I'm just like, I'm going for it. I'm going for it.
Mhm.
And it's part of also my human design too. So, which,
Yeah.
we won't go into that, but it's a lot of fun. Don't go down the rabbit hole.
Yes. Where I can get lost.
Yes, me too.
Uh, so you have another thing that you talk about sometimes about asking for referrals. So how does somebody ask for referrals in a very gracious, non
Pushy sales
pushy? Yes,
way.
there you go, pushy way.
So, because you're adding so much value to people, and even on one-on-one. So, what I always try to do is first ask the person, how can I support you?
Mhm.
And, a lot of people are like, deer in headlights, and they don't know how you can support them.
Mhm.
But what you can do is go back in the conversation that you just had and said, oh, well, you're doing this. When you have that, let me know. I can share it with my community. So always be prepared to ask someone, but don't let them get away with like, oh, I don't know. Because either they don't like to ask for things, and that's okay, but maybe you can come up with something during the conversation that you can bring in and say like, I can support you this way if that works for you. So that's a great opportunity to show that you're in support of them.
Mhm.
And usually, sometimes I get asked first before them, and I'm always open to just asking people, hey, I have this program coming up, it's about X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Do you know somebody that would, fit this, ideal client? Because usually the people that I'm talking to and I'm asking for referrals are either other entrepreneurs, because that's my ideal client. I don't necessarily ask my BFF who, doesn't have any business experience, but when I'm asking for referrals, it's usually other entrepreneurs, and I asking them like, who do you know that might fit this ideal client who might be interested in this?
Mhm.
And sometimes right off the bat, they're like, you need to meet Jesse. I'm going to send you an email and you need to meet Jesse. But always be ready with your ideal client for either the program, product, depending on, what you actually are in business doing, is, be there to say like, I would love if you could think of someone who might be perfect for this program, or might be perfect for, come into this event. Maybe it's a free event. I have a networking event. They're already invited. Maybe they bring a friend. So just so that you can, what's the word? Get your energy, up level your energy so that you can ask for the referral. If it's something free, something paid, just really knowing who your ideal client is and asking. And I know that sometimes that's really difficult for people. So maybe you ask people about a free event versus something that's paid. And in skills, we're building our skills. We're stretching ourselves a little bit. Where if we're like, I don't really like asking for anything,
Mhm.
it might be good. Then you ask, how can I support you? And then the next time that you're talking to them, hey, I have this program. I'd love for you if you could help me out. Maybe you can post something for me. So
Mhm.
something little, something that feels good in your heart, that doesn't feel like a burden. You're not burdening someone on the other end. Like I wouldn't recommend asking for a referral for someone that you just met and you're like not really sure like who they are and you can't still quite get it. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, can I ask for a referral? Just know again, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm
That
like repeating
pushy
myself. Know
part.
your audience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. Being that pushy one, like the
Yep.
ones that you get, you know, that are just cold and they just
Mhm.
come at you like, they haven't gotten to know you at all. They
Right.
haven't even asked you what they could do for you,
Mhm.
except for buy my program, you know,
Exactly.
buy my service. That's what you can do.
I do try to keep it broad so I'm asking them if they know someone. So that's a little bit more comfortable for me. Like, do you know someone? If I think they're like my ideal client, then if I've gotten to know them, I probably would come out and be like, oh my God, I have this program. You have to sign up. I mean, maybe not that excited about it, but I always ask them if they know someone because usually they will come up with someone, they'll connect you. And even if that person doesn't sign up or do whatever, like you've just met a new person who is potentially your ideal client. And usually the person who refers you, if you've connected, then you're going to connect with the referral too. So it's pretty amazing how the like connect the dots happens over time.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love all of this. So, how can people work with you?
All right. Well, if you're like, I'm not sure about this gal, so we do have a free Facebook group that we offer all kinds of amazing things in there. We also have a paid group. It's a mastermind group for just introverts. I haven't actually opened the doors again for that, but I will be soon. If you're an introvert looking to get deep in your relationships, but also grow your income, and not just your relationships, I am here. I'm launching some programs now. And I also do VIP days one on one with people. And that's a great opportunity for it's twofold. So depending on how introverted you are, one-on-one works out really, really well.
Mhm.
And other times, a small group program works out better. So we do have some small group programs and VIP days. So those are ways that you can work with me. And I'd love to see you in the free group. And we also have a free course for you. So if you wanted to check it out.
And your course name is?
Be intentional when networking and connecting, which ties all of this beautiful stuff together for you and has a very beautiful workbook that you can just, take the course as many times as you want, but really gets you out of your head and into your heart and being intentional about those relationships that you are building.
I love that. And I love that it's, almost it's reusable because as we grow and expand, then the next time we go through it, it's like, oh, another little nugget
Yes.
pops up, or you've progressed past a certain point where you used to be, and now you can stretch yourself a little bit further, and you're a little more comfortable with your comfort zone expanded a little bit further out, so you've got to traverse that. So I like that. So we'll be putting all of these links to her website, connectandelevate.com. And we will put in the link to this free course because you're going to want to take advantage of this. This puts everything together of what we've been talking about, and I'm sure it expands it even more,
Yeah.
more complete, because we certainly don't have time to go through all the ins and outs and details of her yummy course. So, do you have anything else you'd like to talk to us about? Any closing words of wisdom?
Well, Geez, we talked a lot about some amazing things, but what I will harp on at the end here is finding your, if you are an introvert or not, finding your superpower. What is the number one thing that you have to offer to this world? And be ready to stretch a little bit. Be ready to, I'm not saying you have to jump from here to there, but that little bit of stretching that you were just talking about, Marianne, and it's just like, just a little bit. And then you like get used to it and just a little bit more. And it's building those skills
Mhm.
around going deeper in more authentic relationships. So, you don't have to do all of what we just talked about. I'm just saying, you know what, if you do one-on-one extra a month, you are going to build your business and your relationships to another level.
I like that. That's like a doable thing that we could uh, implement.
Hmm.
Um, you know, because like for me, I'm the same way as far as like booking things in a day.
Yeah.
This day got overbooked, but for the most part, I do try to,
Yes.
kind of limit and like you said, give the white space in between.
I don't
So
know how many times I'm better at it the last couple of months, but there were times in January I'm like, I'm talking about this to other people, but white space is so important and I'm not implementing it myself. Or I find myself, because I get excited. I get
yes,
excited about connecting with people. And then I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. And then it happens. And I'm like, whoa, that was a
yes,
lot of energy.
yes, yes, yes. And us that are highly sensitives, it can be overstimulating for us. So just that one baby step, just putting one day in where you're going to add a connection, or know that intentionally making that step of connecting with that one person on the Zoom. And it doesn't have to be the whole 50 people on the Zoom.
Right. Because there are some that are big.
Yes, yes, yes. Even if there's only 15,
Right.
just that one that when you look around those beautiful faces, who just stands out, or something they say just sparks something in you. And you go, that's my gal.
Yeah.
That's my person. Um,
And now that right? I feel like now that we've talked about it, your little antenna is gonna go up and you're gonna be like,
yes.
that's what they were talking about. That's my person.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yep.
I remember I was interviewing somebody on the podcast and she was talking about, she took this yoga class, and she said for 5 years, she wanted to go have coffee with one of the other ladies that was in her class
Wow.
consistently for 5 years. And she finally said, oh, for heaven's sakes, you won't die if she says no. Just go ask her. And the woman said, oh, I'm so glad. She says, I've wanted to do this with you all these years. And neither one would speak up,
Wow.
because they kept thinking, oh, well, they don't want to connect with me. It's just
Right.
me.
Right.
But yet, and here now they're fast friends. So there was a lesson in that for me of reaching out when it might be a little uncomfortable, because we're not going to die. We might be a little disappointed they said no, they didn't want to connect, or maybe it's going to flourish into something big.
Yeah.
You
I
just
love
never
that.
know. You just never know. So I love this conversation. I love talking about going deep, not wide, making it narrow and purposeful and intentional and deep and rich, and offering value to our connections and our in those relationships and our community, and not be so wide and shallow,
Yeah.
because that there's no meaning in that.
Mhm. And it's not fulfilling for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And that's my new word that I've been using. Woo, fulfilling. You want, if you're in business for yourself, you want it to fulfill you. You don't want to be like dreading, doing anything. Well, besides that admin work, but we won't go there.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. I so appreciate you sharing your time and spending time with us and teaching us a little more about and assuring us introverts that we can actually do this networking thing and make it deep and rich and of great value. So thank you, Jen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And this is what I love to talk about. So the time just went by really fast, and looking forward to talking some more. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And as always, I want to thank you for listening to our Dynamic Thriving podcast. And as always, again, you are invited to visit our website, maryannpack.com, for all of our services and offerings and free gifts on there. And if you are inclined to like, comment, and be sure and subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating if you can. And I so appreciate you. I appreciate you being here and listening and supporting us energetically and with love and with interest in what our guests talk about. So again, I love you and I thank you for listening. And remember, you are joy looking for a way to express.